Hi everyone, my name is Wayne, and today in this video I'm going to explain Japanese tenses. The reason why I'm making this video is because I want people to know the difference between English tenses and Japanese tenses. And I have seen way too many English speakers that are learning Japanese making the same mistakes in Japanese tenses. So I'm going to make this video to clarify some of the mistakes that they would make. In this video, I wouldn't be going through the formal and informal speech in Japanese because this is not what this video is about. So we have a few tenses in Japanese. So these are the main tenses. We have the non-past tense, which consists of both the present tense and the future tense. We have the past tense, and also we have something called the progressive tense. It's kind of like the continuous tense in English, like when you say I'm eating, I'm drinking. So first, let's take a look at the non-past tense. When do we use this non-past tense? We use this non-past tense when we are describing a habitual action, something that you do every day. For example, I can say 毎日納豆を食べる. This means that I eat natto every day. So what is natto? Well, natto, it's kind of like Japanese fermented soybean. It has a really pungent smell, and Japanese people would usually eat this for breakfast. Some people like it, some people don't like it. I think you really have to try this when you're in Japan. I remember when I was living in Japan, I used to eat this every morning for breakfast. So I would say to my friends, 毎日納豆を食べる, using the non-past tense. So now you know what's natto. Let's go on to the next use of the non-past tense. When you're talking about a future event, something that is happening in the future. In English, you would call this the future tense. It's kind of like you want to say, I will do something or he will do something. So an example for this usage would be 来年日本に行く. This actually means I'm going to Japan next year. I will go to Japan next year. So in Japanese, when you're talking about something that is happening either in the present or in the future, you would use the non-past tense. Pretty interesting, right? So let's talk about the negative non-past tense. Verbs in this tense would end with nai. So when do we use this tense? Well, it's exactly the same as the non-past tense, except that it's negative. So you would describe a habitual action that you don't do every day. Like I don't eat natto every day would be 毎日納豆を食べない in the negative non-past tense. Or when you're talking about a future event that you're not going to do, like 来年日本に行かない I will not go to Japan next year. So that's actually pretty easy, right? So here comes the past tense. Past tense usually ends with da. So when do we use the past tense? There are three ways you can use the past tense. First, when you're describing an action in the past, that is like the past tense in English. An example sentence would be 昨日納豆を食べた. That means I ate natto yesterday. Instead of 食べる, which is the non-past tense, you conjugate 食べる to 食べた. That's the past tense. So the second way to use the non-past tense is when you're expressing a completed action, something that has been completed but is still relevant to the conversation that we're having right now. So that is like the perfect tense in English. I have done something. I've eaten something. So example of this sentence is お金を送った. That means I have sent the money. It's a completed action, but it's still relevant to the conversation that I'm having with you. I've sent you the money. Can you check your account? お金を送ったから確認してくれる? In Japanese, there is no differentiation between the past tense and the perfect tense. It's all lumped together in this past tense. The third way to use this past tense is when you're describing a change of state. Whenever there is a change of state, the verb that is used to describe the change of state would be in the past tense. I'll give you an example. 理由を知った. That means I know the reason now. The reason why 知る, which means to get to know, is conjugated to the past tense 知った. It's because there is a change of state. Before, I didn't know the reason, but now I know the reason. Because there's a change of state from not knowing to knowing, you use the past tense to describe this sentence. 理由を知った can be translated to I know the reason now. But if you were to use your English brain to translate 理由を知った, you might think that that sentence means I knew the reason, which is in its past tense. In Japanese, when you're describing a change of state, you use the past tense too. This is very important because a lot of people get this wrong. So what about the negative past tense? The verbs would usually end with nakatta. Again, it's the same as the past tense, but except that it's negative. So you would use it to describe an action that didn't happen in the past. I did not eat natto yesterday would be kino natto tabenakatta. Or okane o okuranakatta. I have not sent the money. Now, this is the tense that is pretty complicated, and a lot of English speakers, when they're learning Japanese, they would tend to make this mistake. Progressive present tense, or ている, like 食べている, 飲んでいる, 遊んでいる. These verbs are in the progressive present tense, and in English, it would be translated as the continuous tense, like I'm eating, I'm drinking. There are two ways to use this progressive present tense. The first way is exactly like the way that you would say in English. When you're describing a continuous action, I'm eating, I'm drinking, these are continuous actions. So an example would be 納豆を食べている, which means I'm eating natto. It's a continuous action, it's still happening. You use the progressive present tense. The second use of this progressive present tense is a little bit complicated because you don't usually say this in English. So you would use it when you're describing an ongoing state. I'll give you an example so that it's easier for you to understand. 事実を知っている. This means I know the truth. And why is it in the progressive present? Because if you were to directly translate the sentence 事実を知っている, it would be I am knowing the truth. 知っている doesn't mean that I am knowing. It means that I'm in the state of knowing the truth. In Japanese, it's all about the state that one person is currently in. Another example, 彼女が結婚している. That means that she's married because she's in the state of being married. You can't say 彼女が結婚する. That means she's gonna get married. It's very important to use the continuous tense or the progressive present tense when you're describing a state of someone. So I'm gonna give you a visual example so that you would understand what I mean. Imagine this arrow here is a timeline, and this person here is you. 現在 is the present moment. So this is the present moment right now. And this here is when you got married. Let's say you're already married and you got married 2 years ago. And this point right here is when you got married. So what tense would you use to say that I got married 2 years ago? You would say 2年前に結婚した. This is the past tense. And why is it the past tense? If you're describing a point in your life, just a point that an action was made, you can use the past tense. So during the time that you got married, all the way to the present moment, all the way to the future, how would you call this state that you're in right now? You would say 結婚している. You got married 2 years ago, but currently you're still in the state of being married to someone, unless you get divorced. But let's hope that you don't get divorced. So remember, if you're describing a state that you're currently in, you would use the progressive present tense. So let's take a look at another point right here. This point here, let's say this was like 4 years ago. And this point right here, you were not married. How would you say I didn't get married 4 years ago? You would definitely use the negative past tense. 私は4年前に結婚しなかった. I hope you understand a little bit more about the progressive present tense, and let's keep moving forward. So what about the progressive present negative tense? That is the teinai in Japanese. It's actually pretty much the same as the progressive present tense, except that it's in its negative. Let's take a look at the different ways we can use the progressive present negative tense. When you're describing a continuous action that is not happening, for example, 納豆を食べていない, which can be translated to I'm not eating natto right now. The second way you can use this tense is when you're describing an ongoing state that is not happening. So like 彼女が結婚していない, that means she is not married. It's literally translated to she's not in a state of being married. There is another way you can actually use the progressive present tense with this example over here. パーティーに出ない, which means I did not go to the party. You may be asking me, why is this in the past tense? If I say party ni ittenai, doesn't it translate to I am not going to the party? No, in Japanese it's a little bit different, and I'm going to explain to you why when I say party ni ittenai, I actually mean I did not go to the party. So let's take a look at another timeline over here. This is where you are. Genzai means present. And let's say that yesterday there was a party. I would say, 昨日パーティーがあった. And notice that あった is in the past tense because we're talking about a point in your life or a point in this timeline, an action happened. If we're only describing a point in this timeline, you would use the past tense or the non-past tense, depending whether the action happened before the present moment or after the present moment. So let's say the party ended right here. You would say パーティーが終わった. Again, you use the past tense because we're only talking about one point in the timeline. There is no progressive action happening right here. So let's say that you didn't go to the party when the party started. You would say 私はパーティーに行かなかった. But when you're telling your friend that I didn't go to the party, you're not talking about this point over here. You're saying that I didn't go to the party. This is the state I'm currently in. I didn't go to the party. I'm still not at the party. It's a continuous state that you're not at the party and you have never gone to the party and you will never ever have to go to the party again because the party has ended. So this state that you're in is パーティーに行っていない. It's definitely not wrong to say パーティーに行かなかった. You can say that too. But a Japanese person would prefer using パーティーに行ってない. Just keep a lookout on the tenses that they use. It's not wrong, it's just how they describe themselves. Now that we have talked about the unique way of using the progressive present tense, let's say that you actually went to the party. When the party started, you would say パーティーがあった時に僕がパーティーに行った. I went to the party. We're only talking about this point right here. So now that you have gone to the party, could you say that you're in the state of going to the party? Could you say that パーティーに行っている? The answer is no, because the party has ended. So technically, you're not at the party anymore, because that would be crazy. That means you're actually still at the party. All right, so let's say that the party is still ongoing. You went to the party and you're still at the party. So this is when the party started. パーティーがあった. And this is when the party is going to end. パーティーが終わる. Notice that this is not the past tense anymore because the party hasn't ended, so it will end in the future. It's in the non-past tense. パーティーが終わる. The party will end. So let's say that you went to the party, パーティーに行った, and you're currently still at the party. Could you say パーティーに行っている? Yes, you would say パーティーに行っている, even though you're at the party. You're in the state of being at the party. If you translate directly into English, it would be I'm going to the party. That means you're still on your way to the party. But in Japanese, that is not what's happening. In Japanese, you would say パーティーに行ってる when you're at the party because you're talking about the state of you at the party. So for example, your friend calls you, where are you? And you're at the other party. You would say to your friend, 今ね、他のパーティーに行ってる. That means I'm at a different party right now. A lot of English speakers get confused. And I totally understand why, but if you look at this timeline over here, you would understand a little bit better why we use this tense, because we're talking about a state that you're currently in. We're not talking about a point on this timeline. Let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, the progressive past tense. This is actually the progressive tense, but in the past. We're describing a state that is in the past, or deita. So the two ways to use this is obviously going to be when you're describing a continuous action in the past. Like in English, I was eating. Natto would be natto tabeteita. It's something that happened in the past, but it was a continuous state in the past, so you would use this tense. The other way of using this tense, when you're describing a completed state in the past, something that was ongoing in the past, but it has stopped. So for example, パーティーに行っていた. You can say that to mean I went to the party. If you want to describe the state that you were in that happened in the past, you would say パーティーに行っていた. So remember our previous example when I said that you can't say パーティーに行っている because the party has ended? If you take a look at this timeline over here, that was the state here where you actually went to the party, you would say party ni itte The progressive past negative tense, or te inakatta, is exactly like the progressive past tense, but it's in its negative form. So when you're describing a continuous action in the past that did not happen, natto tabete inakatta, I was not eating natto, or you're describing a completed state that did not happen in the past, like party ni itte nakatta, I did not go to the party, you would use this tense. So now let's take a look at a situation where you can use the different tenses that you've just learned in Japanese. Let's take a look at this timeline, and let's say that this person is Tom, and this is the present moment. Tom left his house without his wallet, so he forgot his wallet. So this was the point in time where he forgot his wallet. Remember, when we're talking about a point, we just use the past or the non-past tense. If we're talking about a state, we use the progressive tense. And depending whether it's an ongoing state or a completed state, you can use the progressive present or you can use the progressive past. So now, he forgot his wallet at this point. He would say, Tomu ga saifu o wasureta. You would use the simple past tense. So let's say that he remembers his wallet, or he will remember his wallet in the future. You would say, Tomu wa saifu o oboeru. And this is going to be in the non-past tense. Basically, we are describing an action, you use the non-past tense. But we can also talk about the state that he's in. This line here, where it's describing his state of forgetting his wallet, you would say, Tomu ga ima saifu o wasurete iru. That means he is forgetting his wallet? Not exactly. Remember, in Japanese, if you're describing someone's state, you would use the progressive present tense. In English, you will never say he's forgetting his wallet in this way. And with this visual aid, I think it's better. It helps you to understand the Japanese tenses more. So yeah, these are the basic tenses you would use to describe the situation. Right now, you're in the current moment where he remembers his wallet. Now there is a change of state going on. Because there is a change of state, you would use the past tense. Remember what I said? Saifu o oboita. There is a change of state from him not remembering his wallet to remembering his wallet. This change of state would be expressed by the past tense in Japanese. Saifu o oboita. So now, if he were to be like, he was touching his pockets and he couldn't find his wallet and he's like, I forgot my wallet. What would he say to you? He would say, shimatta, saifu o wasureteta. He forgot his wallet. 今覚えたんだけど財布忘れてた. He would describe the state that he was in instead of saying that he forgot his wallet before he left his house. Okay, so let's time travel a little bit to the point that he actually is still in his house and he hasn't forgotten his wallet. So because you're a time traveler, you know that he's going to forget his wallet. So you would say, Tomu wa saifu o wasureru. Tom is going to forget his wallet. And you would also say at one point he's going to remember that he forgets his wallet. So you say, Tomu wa saifu wasureru kedo saifu o oboeru. Tom is going to forget his wallet, but he's going to remember his wallet. And the state that he's going to be in would be saifu o wasurete iru. So let's go to the moment where he actually left his house. Notice any tenses that would change. So you can't say saifu o wasureru because he has already left his house. So you have to change this to saifu o wasureta. But the state remains the same, saifu o wasurete iru. And what's going to happen in the future still retains its non-past tense, saifu o oboeru. So when he actually remembers his wallet, there should be a change of state somewhere. Instead of saying saifu o oboeru, it becomes saifu o oboeta, because there is a change of state. So the verb that is used to express this change of state would be in the past tense. The state that he forgot his wallet would be in the past. So you would use the progressive past tense, saifu o wasurete ita. So yeah, that concludes my presentation on Japanese tenses. I hope you have a better understanding on the tenses, and I hope that you would not make similar mistakes like this in the future. Thank you very much for watching my video. I'll see you again soon. ありがとうございました。